What's up, guys? Welcome to the We the Dreamers podcast. I'm Kate Voegele, and I'm here with my little sister and co-host, Courtney Voegele. We're really excited to be here. This is our first time trying to record one of these remotely, so please forgive us if things are not exactly smooth sailing. We're really excited. On We the Dreamers, we share inspiration for a well-designed life and home, and today's conversation is all about the subject of hobbies and why it is important to have them as an adult, which is something that I feel like I discovered like more recently than I'd like to admit. Like, it took me a long time in my adult life to realize, I think there was something that was missing in my creative life, and it took me a while to realize that I think that's what it was. So it's kind of an interesting subject that we wanted to dive into.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it took me a little bit to realize that it's okay to have hobbies as an adult and it's not just a thing for kids, and I don't have to completely focus on my career or have my hobbies relate to my career. And I think that's something we're going to dive into. But I definitely think it's important, and having hobbies has really just helped me engage more with my life. So
Totally. Yeah, 100%. So, one thing that you said that I think is central to this conversation is that hobbies feel like a kid vibe. Like, when I think of hobbies, I get super nostalgic for growing up in the 90s and 2000s and doing I think of, what is that movie, Napoleon Dynamite, with Deb, Glam Shots by Deb, Deb's Caboodle. Do you remember
yes.
Caboodles?
Oh my God. I want a
Like,
caboodle now.
the Caboodles, oh my God. I feel like that's got to be one of those things, along with everything else from our childhood, that's having a major resurgence now with
Oh,
right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah,
so
caboodles,
yeah,
Barbies,
Caboodles,
the
Barbies.
fashion.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I
I
mean, with
want it
everything with
all.
the Barbie movie and stuff, totally. Yeah. And, do you remember those spiral books that had there was one we had that was called Nail Art, and it had five shitty nail polishes that were really goopy, but stuck to a strip on the bottom of the spiral book, and then it
Oh,
had all these designs you could do that were impossible to do as a 6-year-old, but
same with
yeah.
like the friendship bracelets and stuff. It was stuff like crafts that I thought were extremely attainable for me to do. Then I was like, this is really difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, when I think of hobbies, same thing. Like as a kid, I would think oh, it's just like what little kids do in their spare time.
Yes,
But
totally.
now I think as we have careers as an adult, and I think for me this is a huge thing, we have the distractions of social media and streaming services. And I think for me, it's I have to be so intentional about choosing to do my hobby and something creative rather than scrolling on Instagram or just watching another episode of HGTV, which is there's always a time and a place for that. But I think it's gotten harder to be able to focus on doing hobbies as I've gotten older. Do you
That is
feel that way?
such Yes, that's such a good point, and it's actually one of those things that it's such an ingrained part of our life now, the scroll and the whole just it's just how we exist in life now. It's how we have conversations with people, some of my friends who I don't live close to, like most of our conversations take place over sending each other memes on Instagram, or sending each other TikToks that are funny. And you know it's awesome, because there's nothing better than finding the perfect meme to send somebody. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I feel like you and I all the time. But it's such a part of our life now that it's you don't realize consciously how much, when there is empty space in your day, or whatever, you pick up your phone, and it's completely it's rote now. It's just truly I'm filming this with my phone right now, and I can feel in the back of my mind that there's a part of me that's where is it,
Where's my phone?
yeah.
I
So
know. Isn't that crazy? I know. I honestly I used to do this a couple months ago, then I got out of the habit, and I used to take 2 days a week to do no social media. And that's a
oh
whole separate
wow,
conversation that we can have. But I feel like I
yeah.
need to start doing that again because recently I've had a lot more free time and stuff. And I haven't felt motivated to do my hobbies And I've just been like, I'm just gonna go on social media and see what other people are up to. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, I'm just depressed now.
Totally.
So I feel like I need to set way better boundaries with that, because I'm like, if I looked at the screen time every week and I spent that time doing hobbies, whether they turn into something or not, like I would be just in a better place.
Totally. And well, it's like what you said is being intentional, but it's like just having this like stuff that's such a part of our lives, this never ending pile of content, which like feels ironic as we're creating content fucking for this podcast, you know what I mean? But like the
Yeah.
never ending, the fact that it is truly a never ending scroll is we never get bored. And that is the thing that I think hobbies, when we were kids, when you got bored, you did like a fun hobby. And so let's unpack why it's problematic to think of hobbies as just a kid thing. Like, okay, I think that all of that nostalgia is like near and dear to my heart. Like I love the fact that it's something that we had as kids, and like, that I had so many hobbies and we did so many things, and I took like clay classes at the local like pottery place, and like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we had so many things. You did like you were absolutely crushing it at softball. Like you were pitcher of the century on the little league softball
Insane to
team.
think about now.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah, it's just like a hobby and I was like pretty good at it.
yeah, you crushed. And it was probably like way better than if, you were just sitting around like watching TV all day. And so, but I think the thing that's really hard is like as an adult, at least I feel like I hear this terminology used in kind of a negative way a lot of the times, but like the word hobbyist is almost like an insult. It's almost like used in a condescending way, right? Like if somebody's
Yeah.
a hobbyist at something, it means like, oh, you're not that good at it, or you don't really take it that seriously, or like, so it's sort of like people are snobby about hobbies. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's part of why I sort of stopped having them by accident without even realizing it as an adult, was because I think there was this part of me that felt like, well, there was always something to do, first of all, because the internet became, what it is now, and phones became what they are. But then it was also a thing of like, I think subconsciously, I just felt like, well, maybe it was lame to be a hobbyist at something. Like, if you're not going to be amazing at it, then what's the point,
Yeah. Or like, in addition to having things to do, like, the internet and streaming services, is like in my head, I'm like, well, I could do this hobby, but I also have to empty the dishes. I also have to make this phone call. I also have to go to the grocery store. I also have to pick up this. So it's like, it feels like a non-adult thing to do, because like, I have so many other things on my to-do list that like if I take the time to do something, it feels like I feel guilty about it.
Totally. You feel guilty. Like you feel like it's not actually productive or something. Like I feel like there's definitely a culture of toxic productivity, and I'm
Yes.
all about like productivity hacks. Like I think that's something that, we talked about doing an episode on, like as creatives, as freelancers, as people who, kind of have unconventional, even if you have a conventional career, I think like productivity, we all want to figure out how to have more time for ourselves. But what's crazy is then when we do have more time for ourselves, it's like we think we should be doing something productive with that time, when really like doing something that fills up your soul that isn't related to some sort of work achievement or some sort of life administration task is actually like, that's a very productive thing for your mental health. But we don't think of it that way. Like,
Yeah, or
it's
you
crazy.
feel like, okay, well, if I do this, I have to be really good at it and it has to end up like bringing me income. And I think that that like leads to a larger conversation within, which I think you can speak really well to, is like when your hobby becomes your job.
That I think is such a huge like part of this conversation. I think like a huge part of what the internet has done for our culture and society that's really positive is that it's sort of leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. Like for me, I spent like most of my adult life as a musician, that was my job. And the internet and like the way social media and everything has, sort of evolved over the course of my life and career has made it so that like it's a lot easier to be an entrepreneur with the internet now. It's a lot easier to take a creative hobby and turn it into a job or a side hustle. And I feel like the side hustle culture, the girl bossing, right? Like the never ending like girl bossing conversation is like sometimes so irritating in that it makes you feel like if there's something you enjoy doing that's creative or that sort of is your hobby, then like that it's your moral responsibility to go turn it into like a side hustle, girl. You know what I mean? And it's like, honestly, it's so irritating, but the message is everywhere. Like, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Like I have definitely put that pressure on myself for like this needs to bring in income eventually, and if there's guilt, I feel like in our society associated with having a career that isn't like your dream job or like was something that you were passionate about and like turned it into your dream job. Like people feel weird having like a job just because they want to make income and like support the life that they want to live, and even if they don't like it, like I feel like it's probably like vulnerable to have hobbies that don't end up turning into something. Like I recently bought an adult coloring book because I was like I'm spending too much of my free time on social media, and I'm like what I love about it is that like this cannot make me money. This cannot. I've been coloring like almost every day for the past week, and I love it. It's great. But I'm like I like this because it's like first of all it's a little bit meditative, the act of just like coloring, and it reminds me of like being a kid.
Oh,
But
yeah.
also I'm like there's no pressure for this to bring me any income, but at the same time I also don't feel like I'm like rotting my brain scrolling, you
Right.
know.
I love that so much. I love that you said like you almost had to force yourself to do something that you enjoy, that you love, that's creative, where you're like, there is no circumstance under which my brain can take this and convince me that I should make a side hustle out of coloring,
Yeah.
because it's
I mean, that'd
not
be
a
great.
thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's huge because like you said, and by the way, like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with taking your hobby and turning it into your job. It's literally like what I did with my career, and I'm really grateful. Like I think that that was my dream, but there was this major shift that happened for me when like the thing that was my hobby all through high school, which was playing guitar and writing songs to like deal with all the bullshit I was, whatever, a teenage kid like deals with, you know, all of a sudden my relationship to making music changed. And it was a really like, it was kind of a difficult thing because I realized like, oh, all of a sudden now the thing that I used to do because it filled up my soul and just made me happy being creative is now the thing that I rely on to pay my rent in this new apartment in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden, that felt like it put a shit ton of pressure on me. And then I also felt like it's like the stakes change, I think, when the art that you used to make for fun is now the art that you make to pay your rent or your mortgage or to feed your kids or whatever it is. It's like, I'm sure anybody who has had a side hustle or a creative hobby that they dreamed of turning into their job, and that dream came true and you ended up turning it into your job, like it does shift something, and it's not a bad thing. But what happened to me was I realized I still needed something creative to do just for fun, that was just
Yeah.
for me, that didn't come with now this pressure to like, okay, now I have to really figure out how to monetize this hobby more and more. You know what I mean? So I love the coloring book thing is like, that's just really, really cool. Like, how did you, what made you decide like, all right, I think I'm gonna see about coloring? Like,
I don't even know. I mean, I think it's because I got laid off like a little over a month ago. So I've had like a lot of time to like think and reflect. And I just felt like I wasn't using my time extremely well.
sure.
Like I was taking like mornings to like apply for jobs and update my resume and do all that stuff, but then there's only so much of that you can do every day. And so in the afternoons I feel like I was just scrolling. And so I mean I follow this account on Instagram called positively present. um it's like an account that has a lot of positive quotes and illustrations. She's a really talented artist, and she had posted
Cool.
like, I'm selling this uh coloring book on Amazon, and it was all about like coloring and like working through anxious thoughts. And I was like, ooh,
I
those
love that.
both sound like things I could use right now. So it's fun. I've just been like working through it, and it's great. And like at first I did have to work through that guilt of being like, oh, this isn't gonna get you a job. This isn't gonna bring you income. But now it's just kind of like, okay, when I have some downtime and I need to like debrief, sometimes I'll like turn on music and just like color for a little bit, and it feels, or even if like there is something on in the background, like if I'm coloring and I'm not looking at social media, it just like feels better for me. Um, so
So
I guess like
love it.
for you, you kind of had to find something other than music to be your hobby, right? Like how did you approach that?
Yeah, it took me a really long time. I spent actually a lot of time feeling super guilty that music that I didn't relate to music in the same way
Yeah.
anymore, because like I started writing songs because I was like a really introverted kid and I didn't know how to process my feelings about like breakups and like friend stuff and just, normal bullshit that like I was super super fortunate to have like a great childhood. It's not like I went through anything like super traumatic, but I think like when you're a teenager, you're figuring out life and you're not sure how to handle your emotions yet. And so for me it was like this release. It was cathartic, right? And all I wanted was like for the songs to help someone else going through a shitty day. And then it was like so incredible that I ended up, being able to take that cathartic hobby and, with the help of so many people, our mom and dad and our community and my fans, like people who were there from like day one, from the MySpace days, like the fact that I was able to take that and turn it into my job was like the coolest thing in the world for me. But it was also like when I sat down to pick up my guitar and write a song, it all of a sudden was like, well, yeah, this could be cathartic, but what do you think the label wants? And like, everybody really wants me to write a breakup song, but I'm in a good relationship right now. So how do I like write the song that's going to be a hit and not, it became about more than just writing a song to help me get through what I was dealing with in my life. I had to write music that also was going to work for a TV show I was singing my songs on and for my record label and for my tour. And like, it was cool and a fun new creative challenge, but it changed my relationship with it. And I felt so bad about that for a long time. And so I think I just realized after a while what had actually taken place. Like, oh, I think this is happening because this used to be my hobby and my catharsis, and now it's my job. And now there's like a paycheck attached to it. And there's all these people who I'm gonna let down if I don't, deliver on this next album. And so I actually, the first thing I started doing that I feel like, kind of helped me work through this was I started painting on my tour bus. Like, you probably remember you came out with me on tour and played violin, with me on some of those tours. And I like just got a bunch of canvas when I was on, a day off in a city. And like, we grew up painting, being super creative with our dad, and it was one of my favorite things to do. I was an art student before I dropped out of college to sign a record deal, so I started painting in the back lounge of my bus, and that really helped because I was like, all right, I'm just getting messy, and I'm not going to sell any of these, and I'm not going to do anything like work related with it. But then what happened is like eventually then I did start like selling some paintings and art prints, and you
Yeah.
know and so it's like the target moves. But I think that that's okay. I think that's fine. Like I think I really enjoyed adding artwork and painting to like the repertoire of things that I could incorporate in my creative career. But I think then it's important to like find other things. Like learning French was a really really big step for me because I always wanted to, and I sort of like never really dug in because I was afraid, that it was going to be really hard and that I was going to be bad at it. And then finally, my husband Brett and I decided to spend 6 months living in Paris. It was always a dream of ours. And I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna hire a tutor. I'm gonna be bad at this. And I think that's another thing too, is like with hobbies, I think it's like you need to have the courage to suck at it, you know?
Yes.
Like, do you feel that way
Yes.
about
That
like
yes, and it's really vulnerable, and as I think we both have like a lot of perfectionist tendencies. That's how I'm in that right now with like sewing. It's like my goal to be able to like sew my own clothes eventually. And it's
that's
somewhere
so
around
cool.
here, but I tried to sew a shirt the other day and like one of the armholes is just it I don't even know how to describe it. It's just not it's like it's wearable, but like it looks like a 4-year-old did it. And it's been really hard for me to get back into it. Like I'll go to the garment district and like get new fabric and like try to kind of like get myself inspired and get these
Yeah.
new tools. And like they've been sitting in a bag on my bench next to our bed for like a month because I'm like, I don't want to mess up again. Like I don't want to waste like 2 yards of fabric again. And I guess like lesson learned, like don't start with the good fabric. Like, you know, you're gonna have like 90 shitty garments before you have one that you like. But like I'm in that right now where I'm like, I'm not motivated to do this because I'm not good at it yet. And it like really bugs me. So I think that's why like I feel like I have some where it's like sewing where it feels like okay, I need to like take the pressure off of this to like everything to be
Yeah.
perfect. But then I also have hobbies like coloring or something where I'm like, okay, like there's literally nothing that like even if I color outside the lines, like no one's gonna see it. Like they don't care. So I think yes, like being a beginner, I feel like we could have a whole other podcast about this because
Yes.
it's really hard. But I think something you said about like some of the hobbies you have you know delved into like French and painting. I feel like for me it just like finding a new hobby starts with just like curiosity. And I think there's like an exercise, there's this book called like The Artist's Way that dad got us actually that I'm still going through, but they have a lot of really helpful prompts of like what are 5 things that interest you, just like interest you in general. And then like they have really good like journaling prompts like that. And some of my hobbies like sewing have come from just like thinking like what is interesting to me, like what do I find interesting. And I think in that way you can like kind of explore different avenues and different hobbies. Obviously like you know some of them can end up being expensive, so I think like I can you can dabble a little bit and then like pick one or two. But how have you like gone about finding other hobbies?
Yeah, I love that's so cool. I like started that book and then, you know, like got distracted with something else and like I'm the worst. I'm the like queen of like starting a book and then abandoning it, but I really want to delve into it deeper because I've heard so many people say like it's such a good like it's like one of those, you know, MVPs of like creative inspiration books. And I love like that idea of curiosity. Like I think you nailed it. Like it is having the courage to be curious about something and not worrying about like cuz when you're curious about something, you know, like curiosity in and of itself, like I don't have the definition in front of me, but like I'm pretty sure that it's not about like knowing every single thing and how to do every single thing related to that thing before you know about it. It's literally the opposite of that, right? Curiosity is about discovering something that's new to you and being excited about that discovery. And I think there's levels of being curious about something, you know, like it can be for you like sewing where you're like, man, someday I really want to sew my own clothes. You know, a thing that I'm curious about in that sense is like one day I want to be like a pie lady. Like I think it's like my 50s or 60s, but like I want to be like a lady who's like dope at making pies. And I
You
said this
want to
to
be a pie lady? This
yeah,
is the
but not
first
now.
I've heard of
No,
this dream.
like I said this to Brett the other
I'm
day and he
sorry.
was like, "Well, it wouldn't hurt to start now," you know? Like he was literally like, "You're going to have to start somewhere with the." And I was like, "Easy. Like we're not there yet. Like I'm horrible at baking. You've gotten really good at like I feel like you know what you're doing. Baking is not my thing. And right now I'm like I'm just not there. Like I'm not curious enough to dive in. But someday I'm like, it would be so cool to be someone who is like, oh yeah, it's peach season. Like I'm gonna make a peach cobbler or a peach pie or like whatever pies you make with peaches or some shit. I don't know. But
I look
it's
forward
like
to that. day.
Yes, thank you. I do too. I'm excited about it. But like then there's other stuff that I'm not even necessarily like curious about on a deep level. It's just fun, like that a couple Christmases ago, mom, who is like so sweet and just knows my soul, knows us so well, got those like styrofoam cone trees at Michael's and like a bunch of like cool shit to glue to the styrofoam trees on Christmas. And it was like, I remember us looking at each other and being like, this is the most fun I've had in
Oh, it
I
was
don't even know how long.
healing. It was
Yeah.
healing. Like, and it's so funny because we have like a big family Christmas, and everybody else was like drinking beers on the porch, like watching football. And Kate and I are like glasses on, hot glue guns, like putting these little things on Christmas trees. And I'm like, that obviously, it's not like we were like, oh, I'm curious about Christmas tree
Right.
decorating. It
It
was
was
more
just
like,
fun.
it's okay to play as an adult. It's
It's
okay to
play.
play. Exactly. And I feel like that has been something I have to learn over and over. It's okay to just have fun and play. It doesn't have to have like an end game, you know?
Yep. And that is such it's that word. It's play, right? And it's like I think sometimes and maybe it's because like neither of us have kids yet. Like I think sometimes my friends who have kids, like kids are so free and they're so, they don't put pressure on themselves to like whatever, like they just want to play. And so maybe that's something like, that is easier to cultivate if you have like little kids around who like make a big mess and don't worry about like whether or not like you're going to be able to get that stain out of that rug. You know what I mean? Like it could be that. Um, but it's also just like, I think very easy as an adult, like you said, with like responsibilities of adult life. Like we do all have to like make money to pay for our lives. We all have like families, houses to take care of. We have chores, we have tasks, and then whenever we don't have those things, there's an endless supply of shit to scroll through or to watch on TV. And so it's so easy to just forget to play and it's easy to forget that play is like a very central part of self-care and like joy in life, I think. And that is like I think it's figuring out how to cultivate play and to give yourself permission to play and have fun and not attach some sort of like outcome to it,
Yes,
right?
exactly. I feel like for me there's like a couple things even just like after this conversation that I want to take with me, which is like it's good to have a hobby. It's good to find hobbies. You can be curious about things that don't have to bring an income. It's okay to play and you should play. It's good for you. Like you said, it's a form of self-care. And, when you do start hobbies, you're going to probably suck at it at first and it's supposed to be that way and it's okay. And, I think something I always tell myself is like I don't have to have motivation to do something. Like even if I don't feel motivated to sew today because I'm sad that it's probably going to look shittier than I want, like that doesn't mean I shouldn't just like plug in my sewing machine and start doing it.
That's
Um
such a good point.
and just like I need to reinstate the like no social media for 2 days a week at least because I feel like if I do
Yeah.
that then I will actually create time for
Did
these
you
fun things.
use any like apps or any like strategy to do that, or was it just like good old fashioned discipline?
It was like I have my schedule every day written down in my notes app in my phone, and I would put like no social media day, and I would like put a check mark um at the end of the week. I used to have like a habit tracker, and I do have the time limit set on my phone, but like every time it's like your time is up on Instagram. I click okay, and then I keep going because I'm like
Yeah,
I'm in the
you're
middle
like
of
the
a really
fuck it is,
yeah. I'm like it's a
like,
French bulldog reel. Like how dare you?
how dare you interrupt me? It's so true.
So I think if I really want to implement it, I do need to have more discipline and use some more tools. Because I've fallen off the wagon recently, just because I've been like, it's
It's so
fine.
hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard, especially when your job involves like creating content. You know what I mean? Like I hate
Yeah.
the word content sometimes because it makes it sound so like, it just reminds me of the Bo Burnham song about the internet, from that Inside special where he's like, we have mountains of content. It just sounds, it's such a kind of like sterile, like,
It's like a
I don't know.
marketing-y way to
It's
say
such a
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a like a, I don't know. But I mean, we're creatives, right? We want to inspire other creatives. We want to create inspiration for other people. And that's a part of what we do, with our job and our blog and our videos, and like, so it's really hard not to like get caught up in the social media tornado, when especially when you're like, well, I'm working. Like, that's what I would tell myself. I'm like, I'm doing research on TikTok right now to
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
out.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, it's a balance, but I love that. I think that, I mean, I'm always in search of like different ways to, help curb. I think there's like a bunch of new apps and stuff that are always coming out to try and help people, because it's such a problem for everyone, like the social media, the doom scroll, this. But I think that like what you said is so crucial. You don't have to have the motivation. Like, it's sort of like, they say this sometimes about like working out or meditating or like whatever it is, like you don't have to wait until you have the biggest craving ever to like meditate or.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I also, something I tell myself a lot of is like, just do it for 20 minutes. Like, that's how I've
Mm,
been with working out lately. Like, I haven't done more than a
love that.
15-minute workout in so long, because that's like right now what I'll be like, I like this morning I was like, I do not want to. I never want to. I never
No,
want to.
me
Like, it's
either.
so
Who
much
does?
easier to just be a piece of shit on the couch like
Who are
every
these
single
people
time.
who want to? I'm always
I
like,
never want to.
good for
My
you.
body is never like,
Congratulations.
and I always feel better afterwards, but I I'm like, just do 15 minutes. Like, that's it. And I'll just be like, before I can even, like, if I'm emptying my coffee, before I can even think about sitting back down on the couch, I just like don't even let myself sit down. I go change into, and I do like a 15-minute, like, very easy, whatever, yoga. I can't even barely touch my toes, but I'm like, whatever. Like, it's better than nothing. And it's not just like working out. Like, there are plenty of days where I just like don't. And that's what my body feels like. It's like, fine, I
For
can
sure.
honor that. I can honor not doing that.
One thing that I love that you said was that you just decided, after you dump out your coffee, you're going to go like put on your yoga clothes, and like that's just what you do. You sort of like stacked that habit on top of, you know, the habit of having your coffee in the morning, which is like the atomic habits, like, the whole
Yeah.
idea behind like that's a whole other like conversation. But I think that you can do that with anything. So like, if I want to just do some of my fun creative hobbies where I allow myself to play more often, you can stack that habit on top of something and say, like, instead of picking up my phone, you know, after my morning shower, I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to color in my coloring book. Like, I love that you said too, like, it can be 20 minutes. You start with something super, super small and manageable. Because that's like the whole, James Clear, the atomic habit idea is that
Yeah.
it's atomic, it's tiny, right? Because I think that what happens is you tell yourself, I'm making time for this, and even if you only do it for 5 minutes, it's like you start to sort of acknowledge that you're making time for yourself, that you're honoring something that you want to do for yourself, and then that sort of builds and gives you the ability to do more of it at some point, or not, or it just, I think like when we like tell ourselves that we want to do more of something, like, oh, I want to be creative more, I want to allow myself to play more, and then when we like show up for ourselves and we actually like honor our goals and things that we want, like that builds confidence, Like, do you feel
Yeah.
that way?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely builds confidence. And I feel like it also just comes back to like what we were talking about before, which is like intention. Like, even something that my husband Lee does that I have tried to do in the past is like, when he picks up his phone, he goes into it knowing like what his intention is. Like, and if his intention is, I'm going to go
Wow.
on Instagram for 10 minutes to see what my friends and family are up to. But he doesn't just pick up his phone and then like let his fingers take him where they want to go. Like he actually thinks about like, this is what I want to do. If it's go on Facebook for 10 minutes, that's fine. But then once I'm done, I'm going to move on. And I
Wow.
think like for me, like when I immediately have a moment of silence, my brain's like, no, don't leave me alone with my thoughts. Pick up your phone and go look at some shit.
Same.
And so I think for me, it's like about being intentional, even if it's something that like isn't necessarily good for me. It's like being intentional about what's my goal with this? Do I just want to look and see what people are doing for 10 minutes and then I'm going to move on? Like that's okay. But I think I'm just trying to be intentional about, both hobbies and just like habits that I have right now that I'm just trying to make like a little bit better for me.
I love that. That's so well said. Like being intentional about everything is, and it like makes sense. Like when you hear that, you're like, well, yeah, obviously I want to be intentional about everything in my life, but it's crazy how much things become just, like automatic and autopilot, like I feel like
Yes.
that's my constantly, I'm like, God, I have spent 6 months on autopilot. Like, why am I not being more intentional about this? And so, I think that would be a fun conversation to have about like intentionally goal setting, intentionally sort of, because I hate most goal setting advice. It's so annoying, but I feel like, there's a difference between being like, you know, I'm going to set some goals for this year and try to achieve them, and then being like, I'm being intentional about what I want out of my life and what I want to spend my time doing and what's important to me. And
Yes.
that's really cool. Like, I think that
Yeah.
that wraps it up perfectly. Well, this is like such a great conversation. I'm definitely like amped now to go just do
Color.
something. Yeah, color. Like I am ready to color. Like I am going to pour myself a glass of wine tonight and color and show it to no one, and it will not be anything other than that. So, well, I love this conversation so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to hear from you. Like, what are some of your favorite hobbies and ways that you allow yourself just to play and be creative for no reason? And also, please let us know in the comments what conversations we should have next. What would you love to hear in the next episode? We always love hearing from our community. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe for more fun conversations and videos soon, creative inspiration, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much.